6 months had passed since the New Dawn returned to Earth with news that changed everything. The governments of the world had split into two camps, those who wanted to surrender and hope for the best, and those who refused to bow to alien masters. The surrender faction controlled most of the surface, but deep beneath the lunar surface, a different kind of government was forming. General Taehyun Kang walked through the corridors of Luna Base 7, a mining facility that had been abandoned for decades until very recently. Now it hummed with activity as thousands of humans worked around the clock on projects that officially didn't exist. The air smelled of metal and determination. "General, Dr. Nam wants to see you in Lab 3, said his aide, a young officer named Kyung-Soo Lim. "She says it's important." Taehyun nodded and made his way through the maze of tunnels. Lab 3 had once been a storage area for mining equipment. Now it housed some of the brightest minds on Earth, working on problems that would have seemed impossible a year ago. Dr. Yejin Nam looked up from her workstation as he entered. Her hair was tied back in a messy bun, and she had the tired look of someone who had been working for days without sleep. Around her, holographic displays showed complex equations and technical diagrams that hurt to look at. "General, I think I've figured something out," she said without any greeting. "About the Valkyrie technology. Good news, I hope?" "Maybe." She gestured to the displays around her. "I've been studying every piece of data we collected from their ships. Their technology is incredibly advanced, but there's something strange about it." Taehyun waited. Dr. Nam had a way of explaining things that made even complex ideas seem simple, but she needed time to organize her thoughts. "It's old," she continued. "Not just the ships we saw, but the technology itself. I can trace design elements that haven't changed in thousands of years. They're using the same basic principles for everything, just scaled up. What does that mean for us? It means they've stopped innovating. When you're the strongest species in the galaxy for 10,000 years, you don't need to improve. You just build bigger versions of what already works." Dr. Nam's eyes lit up with excitement. "But we're not strong, General. We've never been strong, so we've always had to be clever instead." Before Taehyun could respond, alarms began sounding throughout the base. Emergency lights bathed the corridor in red as his communicator crackled to life. "General Kang to Command Center immediately. We have incoming bogies." Taehyun ran through the corridors, Dr. Nam close behind him. The command center was a chaos of activity as officers tracked multiple contacts approaching Earth's solar system. Lieutenant Colonel Ji-Wan Seo looked up from her station. "Sir, we're tracking a single Valkyrie vessel, smaller than the ones that made first contact. It's heading straight for Earth." "A scout," Taehyun realized. "They're checking to see if we've made our decision." "What are your orders, sir?" Taehyun thought quickly. They weren't ready for a fight, not yet. But maybe they didn't need to be. "Signal Captain O, tell him to take the Ghost Protocol and intercept that ship before it reaches Earth." The Ghost Protocol was humanity's first attempt at building something that could match alien technology. It was small, fast, and equipped with experimental stealth systems that made it nearly invisible to conventional sensors. More importantly, it was crewed by volunteers who knew they might not come back. Captain Jae-Sung-Oh received the order while his ship was hidden behind one of Jupiter's moons. His crew of 12 had been waiting for weeks for exactly this opportunity. Unlike the massive exploration vessel that had made first contact, the Ghost Protocol was built for war. "All stations prepare for intercept," Jae-Sung ordered quietly. "Remember, we need that ship intact if possible." The Valkyrie scout ship was beautiful in the same way a crystal chandelier was beautiful. It moved through space with graceful confidence, its hull pulsing with the same organic light patterns they had seen before. It clearly wasn't expecting any resistance from the primitive humans it was coming to check on. "Stealth systems active," reported his tactical officer, a young woman named Subin Kim, who had helped design the cloaking technology. "We're invisible to their sensors." The Ghost Protocol moved like a shadow, matching the alien ship's course and speed. They stayed just outside its sensor range, close enough to strike but far enough away to remain hidden. It was like following a lion while pretending to be a mouse. "Sir, I'm picking up transmissions from the alien ship," reported Communications Officer Woo Jin-han. "They're scanning Earth's surface. It looks like they're cataloging population centers." Jae-Sung felt his jaw tighten. The aliens weren't just checking on humanity's decision. They were already planning how to process 8 billion people like cattle. "All stop," he ordered. "Prepare the capture net." The capture net was another piece of experimental technology, designed by the same team that had built their stealth systems. Instead of destroying the alien ship, it would wrap it in an energy field that disrupted its engines and weapons while keeping the hull intact. Net is charged and ready. Sir, fire. The energy net expanded from the Ghost protocol like a giant spider web made of lightning. It struck the Valkyrie ship before its crew even knew they were under attack. The alien vessel's graceful movement turned into an uncontrolled tumble as its engines failed and its weapons powered down. Direct hit, sir. Target is disabled. Move us in for boarding. And remember, we need prisoners. The boarding action was swift and brutal. The Valkyrie crew had never faced an enemy that could attack them without being detected first. They were used to overwhelming primitive species with superior technology, not fighting opponents who refused to play by their rules. 6 hours later, Jae-sung stood in the alien ship's crystal bridge, looking down at 3 captured Valkyrie officers. Their light patterns had dimmed to almost nothing, which he had learned meant they were either unconscious or in shock. Sir, we've downloaded their entire computer system, reported Subin from her position at an alien control station. There's enough intelligence here to keep our analysts busy for months. What's our status? The ship is ours, sir. We can fly it back to Luna Base, but we'll need to keep the Valkyrie crew sedated. They keep trying to activate some kind of self-destruct. Jae-sung nodded. Do it. And send a message to General Kang. Tell him we have a present for Dr. Nam. Back on Luna Base, the arrival of the captured Valkyrie ship created a sensation that spread through the underground resistance like wildfire. For the first time since the aliens had delivered their ultimatum, humans had struck back and won. Dr. Nam spent days studying the alien prisoners and their technology. What she learned changed everything. General, you need to see this, she said, calling Taehyun to her lab once again. This time she looked excited rather than tired. What have you found? The Empire isn't as strong as they want us to believe. She pulled up a galactic map that showed Valkyrie territories. Look at this carefully. They control 10,000 star systems, but they only have 4 million ships to patrol all of them. Taehyun studied the map. That's still a lot of ships. Not when you spread them across the entire galaxy. Most of their territories are controlled by fear, not actual military presence. A typical system might have 1 or 2 ships for patrol, maybe a small garrison on the main world. You're saying they're spread thin. More than thin. They're stretched to the breaking point. The only reason their empire works is because nobody has ever seriously challenged them before. Dr. Nam highlighted several sections of the map, and here's the really interesting part. The ship that's coming to check on our decision, it's not a massive invasion fleet. It's a patrol group of maybe 200 ships. Taehyun felt something stir in his chest. Hope, maybe, or just the beginning of an idea. 200 ships. 200 ships expecting to find a primitive species that will either surrender immediately or die quickly. They're not prepared for a real fight because they've never had to fight one. Dr. Nam, how long until they arrive? Based on the data from the captured ship, about 6 months. And how long do you need to prepare some surprises for them? Dr. Nam smiled for the first time since the crisis began. Give me 3 months to reverse engineer their technology, and I think we can give the Valkyrie Empire the shock of their lives. Outside the lab, Captain Jae-sung was already planning the next phase of their impossible war. The Ghost Protocol had proven that human ingenuity could overcome alien technology. Now they needed to prove it on a larger scale. Lieutenant Colonel Ji-won Seo was coordinating with resistance cells across Earth and the colonies, spreading the news that the aliens could be beaten. The psychological effect was almost as important as the military victory. In 6 months, the Valkyrie would return expecting to find a broken species ready to submit. Instead, they would find something that had never existed in their 10,000-year empire, an opponent that refused to accept defeat. The countdown to humanity's real test had begun. Captain Hyunwoo Kim stared at the view screen as his ship dropped out of hyperspace near Proxima Centauri. The stars looked different here, cold and distant. Behind him, his crew worked quietly at their stations. Commander So-young Park checked weapon systems that had never been fired in anger. Dr. Jin-ho Lee studied readings from sensors that had never detected alien life. Engineer Mi-ran Choi watched engines that had brought humanity farther from home than anyone had ever traveled. "Sir, we're getting something on long-range sensors," said Lieutenant Dong Min-yoon from the communication station. His voice was steady, but Hyunwoo could hear the excitement underneath. Multiple contacts heading our way. Hyunwoo felt his heart beat faster. This was it. First contact with an alien species. Everything humanity had dreamed about for centuries was about to happen. Put it on screen. The view screen flickered and showed space that looked empty at first. Then the computer enhanced the image and Hyunwoo saw them. 5 massive ships, each one 3 times the size of his vessel. They moved with perfect formation, like dancers who had practiced the same routine for years. Their hulls were smooth and dark, reflecting starlight in strange patterns. "They're beautiful," whispered Miran from her station. "They're also armed," So Young added quietly. "I'm reading energy signatures that could punch holes through our shields like paper." The alien ships slowed as they approached. Hyunwoo could see more details now. The hulls weren't metal like human ships. They looked like crystal or glass, but somehow organic. Light moved through them in waves, creating patterns that hurt to look at directly. "Captain," Dongmin called out. "They're sending a transmission. Audio and visual. On screen." The view screen changed to show the interior of an alien bridge. Hyunwoo had to blink several times before his eyes could make sense of what he was seeing. The creature sitting in what must be the captain's chair was tall, at least 3 meters high even sitting down. Its body was made of the same crystal material as the ship's, but it pulsed with inner light. Where a human would have a face, this being had geometric patterns that shifted and changed as it spoke. When it spoke, the words came through the ship's translation system in perfect, emotionless English. "I am Admiral Thektar of the Velkari Empire. You are unknown to our records." The patterns on its face shifted faster. "State your species designation and submit for classification." Hyunwoo stood up slowly. His uniform felt heavy and his mouth was dry. This was the moment that would define humanity's future among the stars. "I am Captain Hyunwoo Kim of Earth. We are humans, and this is our first journey beyond our solar system." The alien's patterned face went still for a moment. Then it began to pulse in what might have been amusement. "Earth, Sol system. Yes, we have records of your star, though we did not expect to find intelligent life there. You are surprising." "We come in peace," Hyunwoo said, using words humans had practiced for generations. "We hope to learn about the galaxy and make friends with other species." Friends. The way Thektar said the word made it sound strange and foreign. An interesting concept. "Tell me, humans of Earth, what is your technology level? What weapons do you carry? How many worlds do you control?" So Young stepped forward. "We control only Earth. Our weapons are for defense only. Our technology brought us here, but we know we have much to learn. Only Earth." Thektar's patterns shifted again. "And your population?" "About 8 billion, Hyunwoo answered. The silence that followed lasted long enough for Hyunwoo to wonder if the translation system had broken. Finally, Thektar spoke again. 8 billion individuals on a single world. Primitive fusion drives. No energy weapons visible on your vessel. No psionic emanations detected." The alien leaned forward. "You are clearly an Omega-class species. Perhaps Omega-minus given your late development of space travel." "Omega-class?" Dr. Jinho spoke up from his station. "What does that mean?" "The galaxy operates under a natural order established by the Velkari Empire 10,000 years ago," Thektar explained, as if teaching children. "Alpha-class species like ourselves rule and guide. Beta-class species serve as warriors and enforcers. Gamma-class species provide technology and manufacturing. Delta-class species gather resources and grow food. Omega-class species perform manual labor and simple tasks." Hyunwoo felt something cold settle in his stomach. "And which class decides this order?" "The natural order decides itself. The strong lead, the weak follow. This has been the way since before your species discovered fire." Thektar's patterns brightened. "But you need not worry. The Empire is generous to useful species. You will be given work suitable to your capabilities." "Work?" So Young's voice was dangerously quiet. "Of course. Mining, construction, cleaning, simple assembly tasks. Your large population will be quite valuable once properly organized. We estimate your species could provide several million useful workers." Miran turned away from her station, her face pale. Jinho stared at his readings as if they might change. Dongmin's hands moved over his controls, ready to cut the transmission if ordered. Hyunwoo took a deep breath. "Admiral Thektar, thank you for explaining your comm system. However, humans prefer to govern themselves. We respectfully decline your offer." The patterns on Thektar's face stopped moving entirely. For a long moment, the only sound was the quiet hum of the ship's engines. You decline. The words came out flat and cold. An Omega- species declines to serve the Empire. We decline, Hyunwoo repeated firmly. I see. Thektar leaned back in his crystal chair. Perhaps you do not understand the situation. The Empire has ruled this galaxy for 10 millennia. We have cataloged and classified over 12,000 species. None have ever successfully refused our guidance. There's a first time for everything, So Young said quietly. Thektar's patterns began moving again, faster now, almost angry. Your ignorance is understandable. You have never seen the true scope of the galaxy. Allow me to educate you. The view screen changed to show a map of the galaxy. Thousands of star systems glowed with the same crystal light as Velkari ships. The map zoomed and panned, showing world after world under Velkari control. Massive space stations orbited stars. Fleets of crystal ships moved between systems like blood flowing through veins. 10,347 star systems. Thektar's voice continued over the images. 4 million combat vessels. 12,000 subject species, all properly classified and productive. Your single world and primitive technology cannot stand against this reality. The map disappeared, replaced by Thektar's face. However, the Empire is not unreasonable. We understand that primitive species often react poorly to first contact. You will be given one cycle of your homeworld's rotation around its star to consider our offer properly. When we return, you will submit to classification and processing. And if we refuse again? Hyunwoo asked. Defective species serve no purpose in the natural order, Thektar said simply. They are removed to prevent contamination of useful genetic lines. The transmission cut off. The alien ships began to turn away, moving in their perfect formation back toward deep space. Within minutes, they had jumped to hyperspace, leaving the human ship alone among the cold stars. Hyunwoo sat down heavily in his captain's chair. Around him, his crew worked in stunned silence. Finally, So Young spoke. They just gave us 1 year to choose between slavery and death. That's about the size of it, Hyunwoo agreed quietly. Jin-ho looked up from his station. Captain, I've been analyzing the readings from their ships. Their technology is incredible, but it's also old. Very old, like they haven't improved it in centuries. What does that mean? Miran asked. I don't know yet, but maybe, just maybe, it means something important. Hyunwoo stared at the stars on the view screen. Somewhere out there, Earth waited for his report. 8 billion people who had no idea that their world had just been given a death sentence by creatures who saw them as nothing more than potential slaves. Set course for home, he ordered. Best possible speed. As the ship jumped to hyperspace carrying news that would change everything, none of them knew they had just lit the fuse on the greatest war the galaxy had ever seen. Admiral Thektar stood on the bridge of his flagship, watching the Sol system grow larger on the view screen. Behind him, 200 Velkari ships moved in perfect formation, ready to deliver the Empire's judgment on the stubborn humans who had dared to refuse their place in the natural order. Admiral, we are detecting no defensive formations, reported his tactical officer. The human homeworld appears to be completely undefended. Thektar's crystalline face pattern shifted in satisfaction. As expected, primitive species often attempt defiance at first, but they always see reason when faced with inevitable defeat. Scan for population centers. The scan results appeared on his screen showing the locations of Earth's major cities. 8 billion humans clustered in groups that would be easy to process once the planet surrendered. It would be one of the largest labor acquisitions in recent Empire history. Sir, we're receiving a transmission from the human homeworld. Put it through. The view screen changed to show a middle-aged human in a military uniform. Thektar recognized him as one of the crew from the ship they had encountered a year ago. The human looked tired, defeated. Admiral Thektar, this is Admiral So Young Park of Earth Defense Command. We have considered your offer, and we are prepared to discuss terms of surrender. Terms? Thektar's patterns shifted in amusement. There are no terms. You will submit to processing immediately or face extinction. Those are your only choices, we understand. But we request permission to evacuate our children and elderly to our outer colonies before processing begins. Surely the Empire has no use for those too young or too old to work effectively. Thektar considered this. It showed proper understanding of their situation, and removing the useless individuals would make processing the rest more efficient. You have 6 standard hours to complete evacuations. After that, all ships attempting to leave your system will be destroyed. Understood. Thank you for your mercy, Admiral. The transmission ended and Thektar settled back in his command chair. Another primitive species had learned its place in the galaxy. The evacuation would be pathetic to watch, but it would serve as a useful reminder to other species who might consider defiance. Far below the surface of Earth, in the hidden command centers that the Velkari scans had missed, Admiral So-Young Park turned away from the communications console. Around her, the real Earth Defense Command worked at stations that had been built in secret over the past year. Transmission complete, she reported to General Tae-Hyun Kang. They bought it, completely. Good. Status report on our fleet. All ships are in position and holding stealth formation. The Velkari have no idea we're here. The human fleet that waited in the darkness around Earth bore no resemblance to the primitive vessels the Velkari had seen a year ago. Using technology reverse-engineered from the captured scout ship, combined with human innovation that the aliens couldn't have imagined, Earth's defenders had built something entirely new. Captain Jae-Sung-Oh floated in the command center of his new ship, the Shadow Strike. Unlike the old Ghost Protocol, this vessel had been designed from the beginning to fight Velkari technology. Its hull was made of materials that absorbed their sensors instead of reflecting them. Its weapons were based on principles that the Empire had never encountered because they had never needed to innovate past brute force. All ships report ready, he whispered into his communicator. Sound traveled differently in space, but old habits from submarine warfare died hard. Dr. Yejin Nam's voice came through the fleet communications network from her position on Luna Base. Quantum disruptors are fully charged and synchronized. We get one shot at this, people. Make it count. The quantum disruptors were her masterpiece, built using a combination of captured Velkari technology and human theoretical physics. Instead of trying to punch through the aliens' powerful shields, the weapons would turn those shields into implosion devices. The stronger the Velkari defenses, the more devastating the effect would be. All units, this is Admiral Park. So-Young's voice carried across the fleet. In 30 seconds, we show these aliens what happens when you threaten Earth. Remember, we're not just fighting for ourselves. We're fighting for every species in this galaxy that has been enslaved by these crystal tyrants. High above Earth, Admiral Thektar watched his sensors as small ships began launching from the human homeworld. The evacuation was proceeding exactly as expected. Pathetic little vessels carrying the weak and useless away from the inevitable. Admiral, we're detecting some unusual energy readings from the human planet, his tactical officer reported. Very faint, but there seems to be some kind of power buildup. Primitive fusion reactors overloading, most likely. Fear makes inferior species act irrationally. Continue monitoring. The energy readings continued to build, but they were so subtle that the Velkari sensors almost missed them entirely. The readings seemed to be coming from everywhere at once, as if the entire solar system was somehow charging up for something. 10 seconds. So-Young's voice whispered across the human fleet. Captain Jae-Sung-Oh watched his targeting display as it painted every Velkari ship in the system. 200 vessels, spread out in formation to maximize their intimidation factor. They had no idea that human ships surrounded them, hidden by stealth technology that made them invisible to sensors designed to detect crystalline hulls and energy signatures. 5 seconds. Dr. Nam's fingers hovered over the firing control. Around the solar system, hidden quantum disruptor arrays prepared to fire simultaneously. The math had to be perfect. Too early and the Velkari would have time to adapt. Too late and they might detect the trap. 0. Space around Earth lit up like the birth of a new star. The quantum disruptors fired at exactly the same moment, creating a web of energy that reached out to touch every Velkari ship in the system. For a split second, nothing seemed to happen. Then the Velkari shields began to collapse inward. Admiral, Thektar had just enough time to register impossible readings on his instruments before his flagship's own defenses turned against it. The crystal hull that had protected his ship for centuries suddenly became a prison as it imploded, crushed by forces that should not have been possible. Across the Velkari fleet, the same scene played out 200 times. Ships that had ruled the galaxy for 10 millennia crumpled like paper balls in the hands of a giant. The implosions were silent in the vacuum of space, but they lit up the darkness with brief, brilliant flashes as matter compressed beyond its breaking point. In 17 minutes, the entire Velkari patrol fleet ceased to exist. "My God," whispered Lieutenant Dongmin Yoon from his position on the New Dawn. "We actually did it." Captain Hyunwoo Kim stood on his bridge, staring at the empty space where 200 alien warships had been moments before. The same ships that had threatened to destroy his world. The same aliens who had casually discussed turning 8 billion humans into slaves. "Casualties?" he asked. "None, sir. Not a single human ship was even detected, let alone damaged. And the Velkari? No survivors detected, sir. Complete destruction of all enemy vessels." So Young's voice came over the communications network. "All ships, this is Admiral Park. Phase 1 is complete. Begin Phase 2 immediately. Phase 2 is already in motion." Captain Subin Kim led a team of ships equipped with captured Velkari communication technology toward the edge of the solar system. Their job was to hack into the Empire's communication network and broadcast what had just happened. "This is the human ship Freedom's Call broadcasting on all Velkari frequencies," Subin announced as her team broke into the alien networks. "The patrol fleet sent to enslave Earth has been completely destroyed. No human lives were lost. The Empire is not invincible." The message was broadcast along with sensor recordings of the battle, showing Velkari ships being destroyed by weapons they had never seen before, by an enemy they had dismissed as primitive and harmless. Dr. Nam monitored the Empire's communication networks from Luna Base, watching as the news spread like wildfire across the galaxy. "General, you need to see this. The Velkari networks are going crazy." The alien communications channels were filled with disbelief, panic, and something the Empire had never experienced before: doubt. For 10,000 years, no Velkari fleet had ever been defeated. The very idea was impossible, unthinkable. Yet the evidence was right there in the broadcasts. 200 ships gone, destroyed by an Omega-class species that should have been begging for mercy. "Sir, we're intercepting communications from Velkari command centers across the galaxy," reported Lieutenant Kyung-Soo Lim. "They're recalling fleets from border regions. It looks like they're preparing for a major response." General Tae-hyun Kang nodded grimly. "We knew this would happen. Destroying that patrol fleet was just the beginning. Now the real war starts." "General, there's something else," Dr. Nam said, her voice excited. "We're picking up transmissions from non-Velkari sources. Other species are talking about what happened here, and some of them sound hopeful. On 1,000 worlds across the galaxy, species that had served the Empire for millennia were asking questions they had never dared to ask before. If the mighty Velkari could be defeated by primitive humans, what did that mean for the natural order they had been taught to accept? Emperor Velnoth the Eternal had ruled the Velkari Empire for 3,000 years, and in all that time, he had never felt what lesser species called fear. Fear was for creatures that could die, creatures that could fail, creatures that were not perfect crystalline beings blessed with the power to reshape reality itself. But as he stood in the vast crystal chamber that served as his throne room, watching reports flow in from across the galaxy, something cold and unfamiliar settled in the core of his being. 57 systems have gone silent in the past month, reported his prime commander, a massive Velkari whose crystal form pulsed with dark energy. "The rebellion is spreading faster than we can contain it." "Rebellions can be crushed," Velnoth replied, his voice echoing through the chamber like the sound of breaking glass. "We have done so for 10 millennia. This is different, my Emperor. The humans, they are not simply defying us. They are teaching others how to fight us." The Emperor's crystalline face shifted into patterns of anger. The humans, those pathetic Omega-class creatures, had somehow destroyed an entire patrol fleet. And now their success was inspiring every slave species in the galaxy to think they could do the same. "Bring me the analysts," he commanded. 3 smaller Velkari approached the throne, their forms flickering with the nervous energy of beings who knew their lives depended on the accuracy of their reports. "Speak," the Emperor ordered. "My lord, we have studied the human attack in detail. Their weapons appear to use quantum manipulation principles that we have never encountered before. Impossible. Our science is perfect. We have explored every possible application of quantum mechanics." "Yes, my lord, but the humans approach the problem differently. Where we impose our will upon reality, they seem to adapt reality to serve their purposes." Emperor Velnoth was silent for a long moment. The idea that any species could develop science beyond Velkari understanding was heresy. Yet the evidence was undeniable. How many ships will be required to sterilize the human system? My lord, we recommend the full armada. 50,000 ships, including your personal command vessel. We cannot risk another failure. The Emperor considered this. The full armada had not been deployed in over 1,000 years. It was a force capable of destroying entire star systems, led by Velnoth himself and equipped with weapons that could crack planets in half. Prepare the armada. We depart in one standard cycle. Meanwhile, in the hidden depths of Luna Base 7, Dr. Yejin Nam worked frantically on humanity's next impossible project. The success against the patrol fleet had bought them time, but she knew it wouldn't be long before the Empire responded with overwhelming force. The quantum disruptors won't work twice, she explained, to General Taehyun Kang as they walked through a laboratory filled with strange equipment. The Velkari will adapt their shields to resist quantum manipulation. So what's our next move? Dr. Nam led him to a chamber where several humans lay connected to complex machines. Cables and sensors covered their bodies, and their eyes glowed with the same inner light that characterized Velkari technology. We fight fire with fire, she said simply. The Velkari power comes from their ability to manipulate reality through psionics. So we've been working on giving humans the same abilities. General Kang stared at the enhanced humans in shock. You're turning us into them? Not exactly. Human psionics work differently than Velkari psionics, where they impose their will on reality. We adapt to reality and then change it from within. It's more flexible, more creative. One of the enhanced humans opened his eyes and sat up. Captain Jae-sung, looked exactly the same as before, but when he stood, his feet didn't quite touch the ground. The enhancement process is intense, he said, his voice carrying new harmonics. But the abilities are incredible. I can phase through solid matter, manipulate gravity fields, even bend light around objects. How many enhanced humans do we have? 200 so far, with more volunteers coming in every day. But Jae-sung, we need you to lead a special mission. Dr. Nam activated a holographic display showing the galaxy. Red markers indicated Velkari territories, while blue markers showed systems that had declared independence since news of humanity's victory had spread. We're not going to wait for the Velkari to come to us, she explained. We're going to take the fight to them. Liberation fleets are already departing for key systems. Your job is to hit their communication centers and supply bases. Captain Jae-sung nodded, his enhanced senses already processing tactical possibilities that would have been invisible to unmodified humans. What about the other species? Are they really willing to fight alongside us? See for yourself. The hologram changed to show the space around Earth where an impossible sight was taking place. Ships from dozens of different species had gathered, forming the largest fleet in galactic history. Aquatic meridian vessels that looked like living coral moved alongside geometric Zenthak ships that seemed to be made of pure mathematics. Crystal beings called the Nethri had contributed vessels that sang as they moved through space. Admiral So Young Park commanded this diverse fleet from the bridge of the newly constructed Liberation. The ship was twice the size of anything humans had built before, incorporating technology from every species that had joined their cause. Admiral, we're receiving a priority transmission from the outer sensor grid, reported Lieutenant Dong Min Yoon. Long-range scans are detecting a massive fleet approaching from Velkari space. How massive? 50,000 ships, ma'am. Including something that's, well, it's the size of a small moon. So Young felt her stomach drop. They had known this moment would come, but the scope of the Velkari response was beyond anything they had prepared for. Signal all allied fleets. Tell them the big show is about to begin. Across the galaxy, human liberation fleets were already striking at Velkari positions. The enhanced humans led these attacks, their new abilities allowing them to accomplish things that seemed impossible. On the industrial world of Gamma Sector 7, Lieutenant Colonel Ji-won Seo phased through the walls of a Velkari command center, her enhanced psionics making her invisible to their sensors. She planted quantum charges throughout the facility before the guards even knew she was there. On the mining world of Delta Prime, Captain Yujin Bei used her gravity manipulation abilities to turn an entire Velkari garrison upside down. Literally, the crystalline aliens found themselves fighting a battle where up and down changed constantly, where their perfect formations became meaningless chaos. But perhaps the most important battle was taking place in the minds of the enslaved species themselves. Lieutenant Colonel Minho Park led teams of enhanced humans, whose job was not to destroy Velkari installations, but to demonstrate to their subjects that their masters could be defeated. On world after world, humans appeared like ghosts, striking at Velkari forces and then vanishing before retaliation could arrive. Each victory was broadcast across the galaxy, showing enslaved species that resistance was possible. The psychological effect was devastating to the Empire. Species that had served without question for thousands of years began to refuse orders. Velkari administrators found themselves isolated on worlds, where the entire population had turned against them. "My lord," the Prime Commander reported to Emperor Velnoth, "as the Armada approached the Sol system, we are receiving reports of uprisings in over 300 systems. The humans appear to be coordinating simultaneous attacks across the entire galaxy. Impossible. No Omega-class species possesses such strategic capability. The evidence suggests otherwise, my lord. They are not fighting like Omega-class beings. They are fighting like equals. The word hung in the air like poison, equals. In the Velkari worldview, there were no equals. There were only rulers and the ruled, the strong and the weak, Alpha and Omega. When we reach the human system, I will personally demonstrate the futility of their resistance," the Emperor declared. "I will reshape their reality until they beg for the mercy of servitude." But as the Armada approached Earth, sensors detected something that should not have existed. The human system was not defended by a desperate, outnumbered fleet. Instead, it was protected by the largest military force ever, assembled in galactic history. 200,000 ships from hundreds of species filled the space around Earth. The combined fleet represented every enslaved race that had ever dreamed of freedom, all united under human tactical doctrine and equipped with weapons that blended technologies from across the galaxy. Emperor Velnoth stood on the bridge of his moon-sized flagship, staring at the impossible sight before him. For 10,000 years, the Velkari had maintained their empire through the simple principle that resistance was futile. No species had ever successfully opposed them because no species had ever dared to believe they could win. But the humans had changed that. They had done more than defeat a single patrol fleet. They had shattered the myth of Velkari invincibility, and in doing so, they had awakened something that had been sleeping in the hearts of the oppressed for millennia. Hope. "My lord," his tactical officer reported, voice trembling with an emotion that Velkari were not supposed to feel, "the Allied fleet is broadcasting a message on all frequencies. Put it through." The view screen filled with the image of a human female in military uniform. The Battle of Terra began not with weapons, but with minds. Emperor Velnoth stood on the bridge of his massive flagship, the Eternal Dominion, and reached out with his consciousness toward the Allied fleet. His psionic power was beyond anything the galaxy had ever seen. With a thought, he could rewrite the laws of physics in local space. With a gesture, he could will entire fleets out of existence. He had done it before. In the early days of the Empire, when stubborn species had required more direct persuasion than mere overwhelming force could provide. But as his mental power touched the human ships, something impossible happened. His will met resistance. Admiral So-Young Park felt the alien Emperor's mind pressing against hers like a massive weight trying to crush her consciousness. But where a normal human would have been overwhelmed instantly, her enhanced psionics adapted to the attack. Instead of trying to match his strength, she flowed around it like water around a stone. "All ships, the Emperor is attempting psionic domination," she broadcast to the Allied fleet. "Enhanced humans begin reality anchor protocol." Across the fleet, 200 enhanced humans began working in concert. Captain Jae-sung, floating in the command center of the Shadow Strike, reached out with his mind to touch the fabric of space itself. But instead of trying to impose his will like a Velkari would, he simply adapted to what was already there, then gently guided it toward a different configuration. Dr. Yejin Nam's voice came over the communications network from her position on Luna Base. "Emperor Velnoth, you're trying to fight reality itself. But we've learned something your empire never understood. Reality doesn't want to be dominated. It wants to be partnered with." The Emperor's crystalline face shifted into patterns of rage as he felt his psionic attack being neutralized by techniques he had never encountered. Where his mind pressed against the human fleet, their collective consciousness bent without breaking, then snapped back with force he couldn't counter. Impossible, he whispered, his voice carrying across the bridge of his flagship. My will is absolute. My power is beyond measure. Your power is 10,000 years old, Admiral Park replied over the open channel. Ours is 10 minutes old and still evolving. The Emperor gathered his full strength and reached out toward Earth itself, intending to crack the planet in half and end this rebellion once and for all. But as his psionic force touched the world's surface, he encountered something that stopped him cold. 8 billion human minds, all linked together through technology that blended Velkari psionics with human innovation, not trying to match his power, but working together to redirect it. Like a massive river being channeled into 1,000 different streams, his attack was absorbed, distributed, and transformed into something entirely different. Now, Admiral Park ordered quietly. Dr. He-Wan Jung, the enhanced physicist who had designed humanity's quantum weapons, activated the device she had been working on for months. It wasn't a weapon in any conventional sense. It was something far more dangerous to the Velkari Empire. It was empathy. The quantum empathy wave spread out from Earth at the speed of thought, carried along the same psionic networks the Velkari used to maintain control over their empire. But where their networks carried commands and dominance, this wave carried something the galaxy had never experienced on such a scale, the collective emotional experience of every species the Velkari had ever enslaved. Emperor Velnoth felt it hit him, like a tsunami of pain and suffering. 10,000 years of oppression, of broken families, of species reduced to slavery, of worlds stripped bare to feed an empire's endless hunger. The combined trauma of 12,000 enslaved civilizations poured into his consciousness all at once. But it wasn't just pain. Mixed in with the suffering was something else: hope, determination, the unbreakable will of beings who refused to accept that their situation was permanent, the dreams of freedom that had sustained enslaved species through millennia of darkness. Across the Velkari fleet, the same experience was playing out. Crystalline beings who had never felt anything but their own superiority were suddenly forced to experience the galaxy from the perspective of their victims. The psychological shock was devastating. What is this? The Emperor gasped, his perfect crystalline form beginning to crack under the strain. This is what you've done, Dr. Young replied over the communications channel. This is the price of your empire. Every species you've enslaved, every world you've stripped, every life you've destroyed. Feel it all. The Velkari fleet began to break apart as individual ships lost coordination. Captains who had commanded with absolute certainty for centuries found themselves paralyzed by doubt. How could they continue fighting when they could feel the pain they had caused? How could they maintain an empire built on suffering when they could experience that suffering firsthand? But Emperor Velnoth was not ready to surrender. With a supreme effort of will, he cut himself off from the empathy wave and reached deep into the core of his flagship. The Eternal Dominion was more than just a ship. It was a weapon capable of destroying star systems. If I cannot rule this galaxy, he declared, his voice echoing across all frequencies, then no one will. I will destroy your sun and end this rebellion forever. The massive ship began to glow with deadly energy as its stellar disruption weapon charged. Around him, his crew worked frantically to prepare for an attack that would turn Sol into a supernova. But Admiral Park had been expecting this. Captain Kim, you're up. Captain Subin Kim was no longer quite human. The enhancement process had changed her in ways that even Dr. Nam didn't fully understand. She could perceive and manipulate the fundamental forces that held atoms together, that kept stars burning, that maintained the delicate balance between matter and energy. As Emperor Velnoth's weapon prepared to fire, Subin reached out with her enhanced consciousness toward the heart of Sol itself. But instead of disrupting the star, she began to stabilize it, weaving new patterns of magnetic force that would contain any external interference. Fire, the Emperor commanded. The stellar disruption beam lanced out from the Eternal Dominion toward Sol, carrying enough energy to destabilize any normal star. But as it struck the sun's corona, the energy was absorbed and redirected by the magnetic pattern Subin had woven into the star's structure. The disruption beam reflected back along its own path, striking the Velkari flagship with its own weapon's power. Emperor Velnoth had just enough time to understand what had happened before his moon-sized ship began to collapse in on itself. The same weapon that should have destroyed Sol was tearing apart the Eternal Dominion from within. Impossible, he whispered as his bridge disintegrated around him. We are Alpha, we are perfect. We cannot be defeated by Omega. His words were cut off as the flagship imploded, taking the last emperor of the Velkari with it. The destruction of the Eternal Dominion sent shockwaves through what remained of the Velkari fleet. Ships that had fought for 10,000 years without question suddenly found themselves leaderless, their crews overwhelmed by the empathy wave that continued to pour across the galaxy. One by one, Velkari vessels began to power down their weapons and transmit surrender signals. All Allied ships cease fire, Admiral Park ordered. Accept surrender from any vessel that requests it. This war is over, but the work was just beginning. Across the galaxy, the Velkari Empire was collapsing as species after species declared their independence. The liberation fleets that had been striking at Velkari positions found themselves welcomed as heroes rather than conquerors. Captain Jae Sung-oh led teams to Velkari homeworlds, not to destroy them, but to help their inhabitants adapt to a galaxy where they were no longer the dominant species. Many Velkari, freed from the rigid hierarchical thinking that had defined their culture for millennia, embraced the change. Dr. Yejin Nam worked with scientists from hundreds of species to establish new research centers dedicated to cooperation rather than domination. The technologies that had once served to enslave were redesigned to liberate and uplift. General Taehyun Kang coordinated with former slave species to establish new governments based on cooperation and mutual respect rather than fear and hierarchy. 5 years after the Battle of Terra, representatives from over 1,000 species gathered on Earth to sign the Terran Accords. The document established principles that would govern the new galactic community: equality among all sentient beings, the right to self-determination, and the commitment to resolve conflicts through cooperation rather than force. Captain Hyun-woo Kim, now promoted to Admiral, stood before the assembly in the same uniform he had worn during humanity's first contact with the Velkari. But instead of facing threats and ultimatums, he was surrounded by friends and allies. 5 years ago, a Velkari admiral told us that the galaxy operates under a natural order, he said, his words being translated into thousands of languages for the assembled delegates. He said the strong rule and the weak follow. He was wrong. The assembly hall was silent as beings from across the galaxy listened to words that would define their future. There is no natural order that says some beings are worth more than others. There is no law of the universe that makes one species superior to another. The only thing that makes any of us strong is our willingness to stand together.